what's happening right now. As a society and in local communities, we are over focusing on what's wrong with students and what's wrong with youth. As an example, you probably know there are many methods for screening for depression, anxiety, suicidality, all those things. And as it turns out, the more that we screen for those things, the more we look for those things, the more naturally we will find them. Our concern at the Center for the Advancement of Positive Education is we are inadvertently growing the problems. We're paying too much attention to them and we are finding what we look for. And then the students end up identifying with those negative labels, which we believe contributes to worsening rates of mental disorders and suicidality and aggression. And we should flip the script and do the opposite. For us to make schools, make students, and make educators all more safe. Education is the road to the future of our civilization, and we need safe places for young people to learn. And I think the process through which we get there is the pursuit of happiness. We want young people and we want adults who work with young people to experience greater happiness. I had an old social psychology professor in the 1980s. She used to say, happy people are helpful people. Happy people are better problem solvers. Happy people are actually now, this is more recent research, are healthier. And happy people are more kind and more generous. We're not talking about happiness in terms of pleasure happiness. The kind of happiness that we're interested in involves, for students, a sense of belonging, that they belong in the school, that they fit in there, that they're recognized as a part of the community, but also that they feel useful, as if they are contributing to the community. And they feel some improved agency over their emotional life. So they have a sense of what they can do to feel a little bit better, and they can enact those kinds of strategies. We have a class called Happiness for Educators, and the Happiness for Educators course, we've had over 600 Montana educators take it now. It's a 3-credit University of Montana course for graduate credit, and so they can use it toward their pay scale. What we have found is the educators love it. And when they come into the course, there's about 30% of them who are scoring in the clinically depressed range. It's not good for the students. It's not good for the schools. At the end of our class, they're down to about 12% rate of clinical depression, which we wish it was better, but that's about where people their age should be. And so we're feeling really good about the course outcome. The educators are the most grateful. They tell us all the time how much they love their experience in the class. Let's all try to make our first impulse seeing and growing and nurturing strengths in students, in educators, in educational leaders, and really in everyone. When young people are called into an office or go to a school counselor or they have to go in for an assessment, the questions are all negative. And the kids feel anxious because they're usually going to get some negative feedback. What if most of the time when they got called into the office, it was like, hey, I just wanted to give you some feedback. You're doing this really well, and you're doing this really well, and you're doing this really well. That's all. See you later. Really, the advice is, can we flip our instinct to look for what's wrong and instead look for what's strong and what's good and build that up? If we can build up strengths and skills and resources and virtues of students, then they've got those strengths, skills, resources, and virtues to deal with their anxiety, depression, or aggression, suicidality. I was working as a clinical psychologist. I had a 15-year-old boy whose mom was bringing him up for counseling. His dad was not coming. The 15-year-old son and the dad were not speaking. They were in a big conflict. Eventually, I went to an IEP meeting, at his school, and the dad was there. And I tried to come up to him, and he really wanted nothing to do with chatting with me. We were probably quite a bit different, but I still went ahead and I sat next to him. There are probably a dozen people in the room. At some point, I just thought, I'm going to ask a positive question. And I said, hey, if you got an A on a math test, who would you show it to first? And the boy immediately says, I'd show it to my mom, I'd show it to my dad, and I'd show it to my special ed teacher. At this point, the boy was getting all Fs. There was nothing going well for him in school. So it was a question a little bit out of the blue, but I turned to the dad and I said, hey, that's how important you are in your son's life. He would show you that test. And the dad, to my surprise, gets all agitated and he's really angry. And he just starts to rant for probably 2 straight minutes about how the school was trying to teach his kid French and this kid couldn't even read English. We're all just like, whoa, what just happened? And then he turns to me and says, I'll come to counseling. I've done that before. I'll do it again. He came to counseling. The son wouldn't talk to him. I meet with them separately. I meet with the dad. I say, hey, I'm just going to give you 3 things that you can try with your son. You can keep your high standards. I know you want him to do really well in school. And he says to me, that dog don't hunt. What I'm doing's not working, so I might as well try what you're suggesting. I'm like, great. So I said, do you love your son? He says, yes. I say, every day, say that to him. Say, I love you. And he said, I usually leave that to the wife, but I'll do it. And then I said, could you just touch your son every day in a kind and gentle and loving way? And he says, you mean like hug him? I said, yeah, that'd be great. He says, well, I usually leave that to the wife too, but I'll do it. And then the third one is just do something once a week just with him that he enjoys. It shouldn't be something that you want him to do. Just do something fun with him once a week. He says, that'll be easy. We both like to go 4-wheeling. We'll go 4-wheeling. End of session. 2 days later, I get a call from mom. She says, I don't know what happened, but they're talking again. This morning at breakfast, I was in the other room and I thought I heard them hug. Which, of course, she's listening very closely if she thought she heard them hug. And then she said, I saw my son walking out the door, down the driveway, and he had tears streaming down his cheeks. Here we have a crotchety dad, son who will not speak. They needed to be reconnected so badly. Did he get straight A's? No. Did he get better than straight F's? Absolutely. The dad was happy with how his son was doing. They were doing things together again. And I think the school was safer. I think the boy was safer. I think the family was safer because they needed so badly to be reconnected. That's a story that captures what we're all about. How can we move people toward more positive, connecting, empathic relationships? One of the reasons I can do that is the Center for the Advancement of Positive Education. We're in existence because of amazing donation from Phyllis J. Washington. Without her, we have a tiny reach. With her, the Washington Foundation gave us $9.4 million to do what we do. They didn't have to do that. They did it. They make us able to make people's lives better, and we are incredibly grateful.